Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at a classic.
A classic.
A classic of American literature.
That's right.
The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Big one.
it is a big one. And before anyone switches off thinking, oh no, not another stuffy book report,
Right.
we are going to be doing things a little differently today.
Yeah, we're using this novel as a lens
Okay.
to look at the teenage mind in post-World War II America.
Okay.
So it's like a time capsule
All right.
of teenage angst and societal
That's
anxieties
it.
of that time.
So let's jump right in. And speaking of angst,
Okay?
the main man himself,
Yeah.
Holden Caulfield.
Holden Caulfield.
16 years old, just been kicked out of his fancy prep school.
Right before Christmas break.
Just before Christmas break.
Yeah.
This guy is not having a good time.
And he lets us know about it, too.
Oh, he does.
Through his
Yes.
his narration. That
Okay.
raw, unfiltered first-person narration.
Yeah.
You're right there in his head experiencing this disillusionment
Yeah.
and frustration with what he calls the phony adult world.
Phony. He uses that word a lot.
Yes,
doesn't
he does. And that's a good place to start, I think, with this idea of
he?
phony. Because it's not just a random insult for Holden.
Right.
It really gets to the heart of what bothers him about the world around him.
So there's something deeper there.
Yeah, when you sort of dig deeper, you notice that he uses it not just for people who are literally
Putting on a show.
putting on a show,
Yeah.
but for behaviors that feel inauthentic to
Yeah.
him.
Right.
And I think a good example of this is early on, he criticizes this guy, Ossenberger,
Ossenberger, yeah.
who donated a bunch of money to the school.
Yeah, the whole speech
Yeah.
that Ossenberger gives.
Total turnoff for Holden.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Holden sees that donation as a performance,
No.
not genuine generosity.
Okay.
And it's that lack of genuineness, that sense that everything's a facade,
Right.
that really eats at him.
Yeah.
It speaks to a deeper yearning, I think, for authenticity
Okay.
that he struggles to find.
And he sees this phoniness everywhere.
Everywhere. He
Yeah.
calls out
Yeah.
classmates, teachers, strangers.
I mean, is this just
Yeah.
typical teenage rebellion, or is there something more?
Well, I think it's always good to remember the context, right?
Okay.
This is post-World War II America.
Right.
Society is in flux.
Okay.
There's this underlying unease and uncertainty,
Yeah,
especially among young people.
of course.
You know, they're trying to figure out their place in a world
Yeah.
that just went through this massive upheaval.
So you're saying his cynicism.
I think it's a symptom
Yeah.
of a bigger societal anxiety.
But also, it's a very personal story as well.
Absolutely.
What?
And one of the things that
Yeah.
I think we really need to consider is this really pivotal event
Okay.
that happens in the novel
Yeah.
that kind of casts this long shadow over everything.
Yeah.
And that is the death of his younger brother, Ali,
From leukemia.
from leukemia.
So we're dealing with teenage angst, but also
But also
grief,
real grief,
real loss.
loss. Yeah, and that permeates everything.
Okay.
Even something like the red hunting hat.
Okay, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
That red hunting hat he wears.
Mm-hmm.
What is the significance of that?
I think it represents his connection to Ali,
Okay.
to a time of innocence.
Mhm.
You know, remember that detail about Holden buying the hat in New York for Ali,
Yeah.
and then he leaves it on the subway by mistake?
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. It just adds to his feelings of guilt and loss around Ali's death.
Wow.
So the hat becomes this tangible reminder
Yeah.
of Ali,
Right.
and Holden wearing it constantly.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like he's trying to hold on to that innocence
Yeah.
in the face of death and change.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of his relationships, because
Yeah.
this guy has some complicated feelings about pretty much everyone in his life.
Take his roommate Stradlater.
Right.
This relationship is full of tension,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to Jane Gallagher.
Jane Gallagher.
The girl Holden clearly has a soft spot for.
Well, he does.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
I think his feelings for Jane are complex.
Ooh,
You know,
Okay.
it's fueled by admiration, but also this real longing for connection
Okay.
that he doesn't feel,
That's missing from his life at the moment.
that he feels is missing from his life.
Do you remember the scene where he describes Jane
Oh, yeah?
refusing to move her kings in checkers?
Uh-huh.
She just liked the way they looked in the back row.
Yeah, it's a perfect illustration, I think, of Holden seeking genuine connection
Yeah.
in these small details,
Yeah. Yes.
And his intense reaction to Stradlater's date with Jane, I think, is very revealing.
He gets very worked up about it.
So worried about her, he's almost obsessing over
What might happen.
what might happen on this date.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it reveals so much about his own vulnerability.
Yeah. So it's more than just jealousy.
It's more than jealous.
It's that he sees something in Jane that he wants to protect.
That he's afraid will be corrupted by this world.
By the phoniness of the adult world.
By the phoniness of the adult world, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that he dislikes all adults.
Right.
It's that he's worried about the people he cares about being sucked into that world.
I think that's a really insightful observation.
And as we see it.
And we see this play out
in
his interactions with adults throughout the novel.
Like Mr. Spencer,
Oh.
his history teacher.
Yes, the elderly history teacher at Pensy.
God, that visit with Mr. Spencer.
Awkward.
I felt for Holden.
A little bit sorry for him, even though he was being a bit of a jerk.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect example of that generational divide.
Okay.
Mr. Spencer, with all the best intentions, tries to impart wisdom.
Yeah.
But Holden is not having it.
He sees Mr. Spencer as part of that phony adult world he's rebelling against.
And then there's Mr. Antolini.
Mr. Antolini.
Another teacher figure.
A former teacher.
A former teacher who offers him
a place to stay.
Yeah, a place to crash for the night.
Yeah.
And
he gives him advice as well.
He does.
Mr. Antolini sees something in Holden.
Right.
He sees potential.
Yeah.
But he also sees this real danger of him
falling
into despair.
Yeah, he gives that whole speech about spiritual suicide.
Yeah.
Pretty intense stuff.
Heavy stuff.
For a teenager to hear.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it raises these really important questions about Holden's trajectory.
Okay.
Is he headed down a dangerous path?
Right.
Is he capable of pulling himself back from the brink?
And then it gets even weirder, doesn't it?
It does.
Like that whole incident where
he wakes up.
And Mr. Antolini is
patting his head. Yeah, it's a creepy moment. It's a really strange moment.
It is. And Holden freaks out.
He misinterprets it completely.
Yeah, he really does.
Yeah.
And I think that's a moment.
It's a pivotal moment in the novel.
Yeah.
And one that's open to a lot of interpretation.
For sure.
Was Mr. Antolini's gesture innocent?
Yeah.
Or was it something more predatory?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Salinger leaves it deliberately ambiguous.
I think so, too.
Which I think adds to the complexity of the story.
Yeah.
And forces us as readers to kind of confront our own assumptions.
And it leaves Holden even more confused and distrustful of the adult world.
Absolutely. So he runs away.
He does.
Doesn't he?
He does.
From Mr. Antolini's apartment.
Yeah.
He is at his lowest point, I think.
Yeah, he's wandering the streets.
In the whole story at this point.
Exhausted, paranoid, starting to lose touch with reality a little bit.
And all he can think about is...
He's Phoebe.
Yeah,
his younger sister.
He's so worried about her.
He's worried about what his actions might do to her.
Right, and that worry leads him to make
a very reckless decision.
A very reckless decision.
Yeah.
He goes to her school.
He does.
And he leaves her a note.
Asking to meet her.
Asking her to meet him.
At the museum.
Yeah. And when she shows up.
She has a suitcase.
She's run away from home.
With all of her belongings.
To be with him.
It's a really powerful moment.
It is?
It shows just how much Phoebe loves and understands Holden.
Yeah.
But it puts him in a really difficult position.
Well, he knows he can't.
He can't take her with him.
No.
He can't expose her to
this war.
The harsh realities of the world.
That he's experiencing.
Yeah.
So he has to let her go.
He has to let her go.
He has to allow her.
To experience the joys of childhood.
Without burdening her.
Without burdening her with his own struggles.
And that leads to that incredibly powerful scene.
At the carousel.
Yeah.
Where he watches her ride.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows he can't.
He has to let her go.
Keep her there.
Yeah.
He has to let her go.
And I think that's his moment of realization.
Yeah.
He realizes that he can't protect her.
Or anyone.
From the inevitable.
Pain of growing up. And that's where the novel ends.
It does.
We don't know what happens to Holden.
It's deliberately open-ended.
We don't know if he ever gets the help he needs.
Mm-hmm.
If he ever finds his way back home.
But we've seen him undergo a transformation throughout the novel.
We have.
He's no longer that same cynical, alienated teenager
we met at the beginning. So after spending time with Holden and his world, what resonates with you?
Well, I think,
Yeah.
we've all felt that sense of alienation,
Sure.
that yearning for authenticity, that
Yeah.
confusion about our place in the world.
Right.
And I think Holden's story reminds us
Mm.
that those feelings are a normal part of growing
Yeah.
up.
So maybe The Catcher in the Rye
Mm-hmm.
is more than just a coming-of-age story.
I think it's a reminder that
Yeah.
we're all
Constantly coming of age.
constantly coming of age,
Right.
grappling with the complexities of life,
Trying to find our way.
trying to find our way in a world that doesn't always make sense.
It's a book that stays with you,
It does.
doesn't it?
It does.
Long after you finish reading it.
Long time.
Thanks for joining us
Thanks for having me.
for this deep dive into
Mm-hmm.
The Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
We hope you've gained some new insights into this incredible book.
Classic.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,
Keep seeking.
and keep seeking those moments of genuine connection in a world
Yeah.
that often feels phony and confusing.
Very phony.
See you next time. Bye. Bye. I think it's fascinating how Salinger manages to make Holden,
Yeah.
despite all his flaws, right, a character that you can't help but root for.
I think you see those glimpses of vulnerability, don't you?
You do?
You see his desire for connection,
Yeah.
even amidst all this cynicism.
It's like he's built up all these walls
Yeah.
to protect himself from
Right.
getting hurt.
Absolutely. And I think that's especially evident in his interactions with adults, right?
Yeah, he's constantly seeking guidance, but
But he just can't.
he just...
Yeah, he won't take advice.
Yeah, think about his encounter with Mr. Spencer.
Yeah, that's a great.
He goes to him explicitly for advice
Yeah.
and comes away feeling more alienated and misunderstood.
It's like he's looking for validation
Yeah.
rather than actual guidance.
Right. He wants someone to understand his perspective.
Yeah.
Not necessarily tell him what to do.
And we see that pattern
We see it again and again.
throughout the whole novel.
Yeah, with Carl Luce.
Yeah, with Mr. Antolini.
There's this disconnect
Yeah.
between his yearning for connection and his fear of vulnerability. And then he's in New York City,
Oh, yeah, he's thrown into this
this chaotic adult world
chaotic adult world.
with no safety net.
Yeah.
And he's kind of forced to confront all the things
That he's been trying to avoid.
that he's been trying to avoid.
Exactly. And his experiences in New York are just this whirlwind of encounters.
Yeah.
Some are humorous, some are heartbreaking, some are downright disturbing.
Like when he meets those three girls in the lavender room,
Oh, yeah.
it's almost painful
It is.
to watch him.
Yeah, he's initially drawn to them,
Yeah.
intrigued by their naivete,
Yeah.
but ultimately
He just finds them
he finds their conversation so shallow
and unsatisfying.
and unsatisfying. Yeah.
And it's interesting how their obsession with
Right.
movie stars
Yeah.
and seeing celebrities.
Going to Radio City Music Hall just reinforces his view that
It just plays into
everyone's obsessed
Sorry.
with this
what
superficiality.
he finds so repellent.
And then there's that whole thing with Sonny. Oh, Sonny the prostitute.
It's a tough scene.
It is, I think it's a very significant scene, though.
Okay.
Because it reveals so much about Holden's emotional immaturity
Yeah.
and his inability to really connect with others
On an intimate level.
on a truly intimate level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's trying to act sophisticated,
Oh, he is?
but he's so clearly uncomfortable.
Out of his depth.
Out of his depth, yeah.
When he makes up that story about having surgery
Oh,
to avoid
fruiting shit with her.
I was like, he's so desperate to maintain this facade
Yeah.
of worldliness.
Yeah,
But deep down, he's still a scared kid.
he is.
Yeah.
He is.
And that need to create distance to protect himself from getting hurt.
It's a recurring theme.
Isn't it? It is a recurring theme.
Yeah, he uses lies and deception as a defense mechanism.
And it backfires.
It does.
The whole episode with Sonny and Maurice.
Right? Ends up leaving him feeling even more vulnerable and alone.
And alone
Yeah, it's a harsh reminder of the dangers
of this adult world
that he's facing, isn't it?
that he's trying to escape from.
Yeah, he's ill-equipped to deal with the realities
This world.
of this world, yeah.
It's not just the physical danger either.
Yeah.
He's going through
He's struggling with these
these intense
emotional swings.
emotional swings.
Yeah.
One minute he's reaching out for connection, the next
He's pushing everyone away.
he's pushing everyone away.
It's like this constant push and pull.
I think his date with Sally Hayes
Oh, God.
is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
It's like watching a car crash in slow motion.
It's a disaster from start to finish.
It is. And Sally represents everything
Everything
that Holden hates
about the adult world.
about the adult world.
Yes, she's concerned with appearances, social status.
And then he just impulsively says,
Yeah.
Let's run away together.
Yeah, let's go to this cabin in the woods.
Romantic, but totally unrealistic.
Completely
They're
unrealistic.
teenagers with no money.
No money, no experience.
No experience.
It's doomed from the start.
And then he insults her,
He does.
calls her a pain in the ass.
Yeah, and any chance of a genuine connection
Just evaporates.
just evaporates.
And we see this happen over and over.
We do. He tries to connect with Carl Luce.
Right. And Luce is like, I've moved on.
I've moved on from those conversations, Holden.
Hell,
I'm not having those anymore.
an adolescent anymore.
Exactly.
He tries to have a meaningful interaction
With a singer?
with a singer at a bar.
Yeah.
He tries to talk to a piano player.
It all leads to more disillusionment.
He even tries to connect with those nuns.
Yeah, he's just desperately seeking some kind of
Some sort of human connection.
human connection.
Yeah.
And he's trapped in this cycle
Of yearning for it
and then sabotaging it
and then sabotaging it
before it can even develop.
before it can really develop.
And through all of this,
Hmm.
he keeps talking to Allie,
To his dead brother.
his dead brother.
Yeah.
That's a recurring motif. It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is.
It really speaks to the depth of his grief
Yeah.
and his inability to cope with this loss.
Yeah.
He's clinging to the memory of Allie, to a time when he felt safe and loved
Right.
as a way of escaping the pain of the present.
It's like Allie represents everything.
The innocence, the purity,
That's
simplicity of childhood,
Yeah.
all the things that Holden is desperately trying to
Hold on.
hold on to. Yeah.
And I think that leads him to make a very rash decision.
To go see Phoebe.
He decides to sneak home to see Phoebe.
Yeah.
And it's driven by loneliness,
A need for connection.
worry,
Yeah.
that desperate need to connect with someone
Who understands him.
who really gets him.
Yeah.
And his interactions with Phoebe,
They're just so genuine.
so genuine and heartwarming
They are, and their relationship is one of the few bright spots, I think,
in his life.
in Holden's life.
Absolutely, she's so smart.
She's insightful. She's unconditionally loving.
And she sees right through him.
She does. She recognizes the pain that he's trying to hide.
She sees through all the cynicism and the bravado.
And Holden lets his guard down.
He does in a way that he doesn't with anyone else.
Yeah, they read together, they dance.
They talk about their dreams.
It's a beautiful.
It reminds us of the innocence and joy
Yeah.
that Holden is so desperately trying to hold on to.
It's just this little pocket of warmth and connection.
Exactly.
But it can't last.
it can't last.
He can't stay there forever.
No.
He's running from something.
He's still running from those expectations of the adult world.
The pain of his past.
The pain of his past.
And the realization that he can't protect anyone.
Not even Phoebe.
Not even
From
Phoebe.
the inevitable fall into adulthood.
Which leads him
Mr. Angelini.
to Mr. Antolini's apartment.
Yeah.
And that's where things take a bit of a dark turn.
Yeah.
But before we dive into that,
Okay.
what stands out to you about Holden's journey?
How about
Yep.
you think?
That visit to Mr. Antolini.
Yeah.
It's always felt unsettling to me. There's that real sense of foreboding, I think.
Yeah, like he's reaching out for help.
Yeah.
And then something happened.
Something happens.
That just sends him spiraling
Yeah.
even further down.
And I think Salinger handles this whole episode with real ambiguity.
Right.
You know, we have to remember that Mr. Antolini
Yeah.
gives Holden that really impassioned speech
He does.
about the dangers of falling,
Yeah.
losing yourself in despair and cynicism,
Yeah, that whole spiritual suicide thing.
spiritual suicide,
Yeah.
heavy stuff,
Heavy stuff.
especially for a teenager who's already
Yeah, feeling lost.
feeling lost and alone.
Mr. Antolini sees something in Holden, though.
He does. He sees potential,
Yeah.
but he also sees this real danger
Yeah.
of self-destruction.
And he even quotes a psychoanalyst. Doesn't he warning Holden that he's heading for this
For a fall,
breakdown
a major breakdown,
if he doesn't get himself together?
unless he sorts himself out.
But then there's that incident
That incident
where Holden wakes up
in the middle of the night,
and Mr. Antolini's patting his head.
patting his head.
It's creepy.
It's a creepy moment.
And Holden freaks out.
And he interprets it as something sexual,
Yeah.
which, you know,
Whether he's right or wrong,
who knows?
we don't know.
We don't know. And I think Salinger does that deliberately.
Yeah.
Leaves it ambiguous
Yeah.
to add to the complexity.
Yeah.
And I think it forces us to confront our own assumptions
About the character.
about the characters, about the situation.
About everything.
Yeah.
And it leaves Holden
Poetically
feeling even more
confused.
confused and distrustful
Yeah.
of the adult world.
He doesn't know who to trust
No.
at this
Yeah,
point.
he doesn't.
Yeah.
So he runs away
He runs away again.
from Mr. Antolini's apartment.
Yeah.
And he's wandering the streets of New York,
At his lowest point.
exhausted, paranoid,
Yeah.
starting to lose his grip on reality.
He even starts imagining that he's going to disappear.
I remember that.
Every time he crosses the street,
Yeah.
like he's going to just vanish.
Not our full image.
Yeah.
It's alienation.
Yeah, this feeling of being lost
Lost in a world that just feels threatening and indifferent.
completely.
And it's interesting that all he can think about
That's Phoebe.
is Phoebe.
Yeah,
He's so worried about her.
he is.
And that worry leads him to make another
Reckless decision.
pretty reckless decision.
Yeah, he goes to her school,
Yeah.
leaves her a note
Asking her to meet him
at the museum.
at the museum, and when she shows up,
She has a suitcase
she's run away from home.
to be with him.
It's such a powerful moment.
It shows how much she loves him,
Yeah.
but it puts Holden
In a tough spot.
in a really difficult position.
Because he knows he can't.
He can't take her with him.
No.
He can't expose her to the realities
Of the world he's experiencing.
of the world he's experiencing.
I think that's where he has his
realization.
realization that he can't protect her.
He can't protect anyone
Please.
from the inevitable pain of growing up.
And so he takes her to the zoo,
To the carousel.
and they watch the carousel.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful scene, but it's also heartbreaking.
It is.
Holden finds this moment of peace.
Watching Phoebe go round and round.
But he knows he has to let her go.
He has to.
He can't keep her there.
And I think that's symbolic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of him letting go of that need
Yeah.
to protect innocence.
To hold on to the past.
To hold on to the past.
Yeah. And as he watches her,
He starts to cry.
he cries.
Yeah.
And it's like he's finally letting go.
He's letting go of that need to control everything.
Yeah.
To protect everyone.
To protect everyone from the pain
The pain of growing up.
of the world.
The disillusionment of the world.
Yeah. It's a moment of catharsis.
It is.
And that's where the novel ends.
It does.
We don't know what happens to Holden.
We don't.
We don't know if he ever gets help.
We don't know if he finds his way back home.
But I think we see him change.
We see him change.
Don't we? Over the course of the story.
We're not the same cynical,
alienated
teenager.
Yeah, we met at the beginning.
We met at the beginning. No.
So it's been fascinating
Yeah,
talking about Holden and his world.
Yeah.
What resonates with you?
Well, I think, we've all felt that alienation.
Yeah.
That yearning for something real.
That confusion.
The confusion of growing up.
And I think Holden's story just reminds us
It does.
that those feelings,
They're a normal part of growing up.
yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So maybe The Catcher in the Rye,
It's a reminder
it's more than just a coming-of-age story.
that we're all constantly coming of age.
We are grappling with life,
Trying to find our way.
trying to find our way in a world.
In a world that often doesn't make sense.
A Catcher in the Rye.
It stays with you
It does. It
Yeah.
stays with
a
you.
long time after you finish reading it.
Well, thanks for joining us
Thanks for having me.
for another deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into a classic. Until next time,
See you then.
keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking those moments of genuine connection
In this phony world.
in this world that often feels phony and confusing.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.